there are a lot of parents and a lot of kids on the campus that are aware of what their accommodations are or modifications. So you'll probably have some parents before school begins. We have a couple that I've already talked to that said, you know, I'm going to email the teachers, introduce myself, and make sure that they're aware that my child should be receiving accommodations. So you need to be aware of what's in here. Every teacher will get one of these on the student that's receiving special ed services. You need to make sure you look at your specific class, and I'm going to show you the form. And the forms are specific to the individual. We don't blanket because they're in special ed, everybody gets the same kind of accommodations or modifications. We individualize for each student that we work with. Every year, I said everybody had to have an annual ARD. So for example, in October, Susie Smith, this is her folder. You get a folder at the end of August on Susie Smith. You're aware of what her modifications and accommodations are. You keep this in a secure area in your classroom. You need to be aware of this. In October, we have an annual ARD, and we make some changes to her accommodations. You will get her new forms put in your box with a little note that says, please put these new forms in your red folder. Okay? At the end of the year, we're going to ask for these folders back. We were just amazed at the end of the year last year when we got red folders back and the information in there was not current. So we don't know where those forms went. And if a parent comes back to you or we come to you and say, you know, we made some changes, and you're saying, what? What are you talking about? We say, can we see the red folder? And you open it up and the current information is not there, that shows us that you're not aware. And remember that you are signing that you are aware of what their accommodations and modifications are. So you need to be real aware that when you get that form, that they have new updated information, that you put it in. You can put it in at the top of the other ones, or you can throw out the inserts that are in here and put the new ones in. But this needs to be current, and this needs to be somewhere where you're aware of where it is. Don't file it away somewhere where you don't know where you have it. Okay?
As far as throwing out, do you want us to chunk it, tear it up, shred it?
Shred it would be the best. Yeah. And you can even bring it by our office because Life Skills comes and gets all of ours to shred. Okay, on the red folder, I'm going to try to do this balancing act here. In the red folder, there is a sheet that on the bottom, on the left side, it tells you the tracking teacher's name. So if you can't find it in Skyward, you're not sure, it's always here in the red folder. So this is another place you can find out where who the tracking teacher is. Inside the folder, you'll have two sheets, 7A and 7B, and it's their accommodations and modifications, and we're going to take a look at that. And it also has a copy of the behavior intervention plan, if they do have one, and then any individualized education plans that they have. If a child, at the beginning of the year, you know, the counselors are trying to level classes, so when we hand out red folders, we're doing that based on the schedule that they have at that time. There may be a time where the counselors come in and we can't keep up with all the schedule changes that are going on. So it is your responsibility, if you have a student, Susie Smith, in your class, and you get a schedule change, or the kid gets a schedule change, Susie gets a schedule change to another teacher, please do not keep that folder. If the child moves out of your classroom, you can put it in one of our mailboxes and you'll get a little note. You can either put it in the special ed mailbox, or you can come and bring it to us in the special ed office and just say, this child moved out of my out of my class, and then we'll find out where they moved to. But please don't keep these, because that's our biggest part of our budget is red folders every year. Okay, this is an example of the modifications and accommodations that a child would get. Now, most kids get accommodations, not all kids get modifications. Okay, we're going to talk about the difference between the two. But if you look here, this is the most important, the name, the ID, and then the duration of services, so I know if this is current information. The best thing you can do is look at your subject area. For example, English. You're going to look, and you can highlight it if you need to, highlight it all the way down. And you can look and see the different accommodations that this child should be receiving. So for example, in English, check for understanding of directions. So I want to make sure I'm checking and having them maybe rephrase what the directions are. Right here, reduce length for written essays. Okay? So if the class is, maybe I've asked them to write 3 essays, I might ask the student to write 1 or 2. Okay, if you look on down, there's no more for English here. Look at the next line. Clearly define consistent limits. Reminders to stay on task. Okay, so it might not be the same. Some students get the same all the way across. And then if you look here, summaries, notes, outlines, reviews, provide hard copies of notes. That's only for science and social studies. So if I'm their English teacher, if I'm their math teacher, then I wouldn't be doing that. But if I'm, their science and social studies, I would be doing that. As I said, there's 2 pages. The second page on here, again, reduce length of major reports for English. Now here, if you see content modification, that means they have modifications to the content in your class. A lot of those are your co-teach kids that are on the co-teach roster. Okay? So, and this student also has implementation of the BIP, that's the Behavior Intervention Plan. So they have a behavior plan that you need to be aware of, okay? Because when you're doing a referral, you need to make sure that you're following their behavior plan and the interventions and the strategies that are on there. A lot of times over here, we write if a child, for example, has a processing disorder or something or needs extra time, or something that's not specific to one of these, we'll write in there some suggestions. Some parents want their email written on there. They want to be contacted if a grade is lower than a certain, percentage. And so we write that information on there. So it's just for you to be aware of. There might be some additional notations. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit for a few minutes about accommodations. And accommodations is a change made in the teaching procedure in order to provide a student with access to information and to create an equal opportunity for them to demonstrate to you that they have the same knowledge and the same skills as everybody else in your classroom. You are not changing the expectation of what they're to know in your classroom, okay? The objectives of the course remain intact, and it refers to the teaching supports that you provide and the services that they may need. Okay, again, it does not change the expectations to the curriculum. We're going to have also, if any of you would like to know, additional accommodations or you need help with this, we would be more than happy to assist you with that. Some examples of accommodations would be additional time. Maybe your class for the whole can finish in 30 minutes, they may need 45. They may need to be sitting in the front, maybe sitting in the back, not necessarily always in the front, maybe on the side. Provide extra time for processing, highlighted text, graphic organizers. There's all kinds of things that can be accommodated for, okay? All of these things are examples of accommodations. Modifications, when you modify the work, it changes what the student is expected to learn or to demonstrate back to you. That's a modification. It changes the curriculum expectations of the student. And modifications are made when the expectations are beyond the student's level of ability. Okay? It can be minimal or very complex depending on the student performance. And usually it's written out in their individualized education plan, which you will receive in their red folder. Okay? So most of the students that are sitting in the general education class will have accommodations. They will not have modifications. But for example, some of the students in your co-teach classes, if they're in the co-teach section, they might have some modifications. And that's where your co-teacher comes in to help you to modify a test, to modify the assignments. That's their job. They're the specialist in that area. Here's some more examples of modifications. You can include the student in the same activity, but you individualize what the expectations are, like, for example, the worksheet or the assignment that they have to do. They have different tasks and expectations. They're expected to learn something different than the general education student. A special ed student can graduate 3 different ways. One is through all general education classes. They can either be minimum, recommended, or distinguished, and they must not have taken any modified curriculum courses. And we have a lot of students that are functioning just fine like that. Okay, they have accommodations only. We don't do anything to modify the curriculum, and they're state graduates. We have some students that are graduating by their individualized education plan. They follow the minimum plan, and their courses are modified. And then the last graduation track, we have some students that age out. Mainly those are our life skill students. A couple AB, we take that on an individual basis. State assessment. This is a very changing topic with all of our changes that we have with state assessment. Most of our kids, our current 11th graders, take tax or tax modified, and the current 9th and 10th graders take STAR or STAR modified. Okay, we're going to talk about our kids. If we want a child to take the STAR modified or any modified version, we have to show and document that they are working several grade levels behind what is expected in the classroom. So for example, when you're asked to provide information to the ARD committee, it is really important that you provide accurate information on whether they're working on grade level or not. Because, for example, this is, I'm going to go back to that one if I can. This is one of the examples of what we have to fill out during an ARD meeting to say whether a child needs to take the STAR modified. Okay? It's saying here that we have to answer these 3 questions. And if any of the answers to the questions is no, they're not eligible to take a modified version of the STAR. So we have to look, does the student's present levels of academic achievement and functional performance during the ARD committee conclude that the student is multiple years behind grade level or course expectations and will not progress at the same level of rigor? So we have to answer that. Does the student's IEP contain standard-based, TEKS-based goals indicating the modified content? If this is not all written out in their program, then we cannot say that they can take STAR modified. They will have to take the end of course, the regular STAR. Does the student require direct and intensive instruction in order to acquire, maintain, and transfer skills to other contents? Okay, so again, if you think about all 3 questions, if we answer no to any of these, then they have to take the regular STAR. So that's why we talk to you about the importance of letting us know if you feel that a child is not appropriately placed in your classroom. We don't want to wait till an annual ARD meeting. They've been in your classroom, working on what we think is grade level assignments. And then we get to, let's say, February, right before this test, and then you come in and say, they need to take the modified version. But we have no documentation in their plan that they've been receiving or requiring any kind of modified curriculum courses. At that point in time, we really can't change things, because then that is a ding that the state looks at and says, wait a minute, we're getting ready for state assessment, now all of a sudden you're making these changes. So that's why we really want you to be aware of some of the requirements so that you can keep track of your kids and know what they are working on. Okay? Are there any questions? I know we've talked a lot about information and we've given you a bunch, but again, we're accessible. We'll come out to the classroom. We'll come to conference. We'll be, coming to Make 7 meetings and being there anytime you have questions, concerns, you want to find out more about a student. That's what we're here for, is to support you in the classroom. Do you all have any general questions at this point? Yes?
At my last school, they had a very specific form. Every time we tested or gave any accommodations, they wanted us to note it so that the student would be able to use it during STAR testing. Do we have that sort of paperwork?
Yes. In your red folder is what's written on there. If we're not doing that on a daily basis, then we cannot do it when it comes to the STAR. So that's why we ask you to really be aware of the 7A and 7B, what's on there. Because if the student is utilizing them, great, then we want to know that's what we're basing it on. But if you're doing more than what's written in their program, we need to know about it, because if it's not documented in their program, we cannot use it during the STAR. So that's why we're asking for that information, because everything has to match. So anything that you do in addition on that teacher form, we're asking you to tell us if you're doing anything additional than what's written in their program. Okay, that's a good question. Any other questions?
And another thing that I'll send you guys is I have a spreadsheet that the teacher sent me that I thought was really great. And what they did is it has all the accommodations that a kid could have listed kind of at the top of a spreadsheet. And so at the beginning of the year, they take their red folders and they list every kid, and then they put like little check marks across. You know what I mean? So they have it just on like a one sheet quick reference. My only caution on that is that make sure you update them when you get if you get an updated ARD sheet. But just to have one little sheet of paper that you can kind of have tucked in a drawer that has everything listed instead of having to go through folders. Plus, I mean, I have a photograph